I feel like every person who has ever played a video game is familiar on some level with the original Super Mario Bros. For a lot of people, this is still one of the first things they think of when they hear the term video game, and if you've ever played a game on the original NES, it was probably this one. And I love how you can look up the Super Mario Bros. Theme on YouTube, and no matter what video you click on, somebody in the comments will say, "All rise for the video game national anthem." But what you might not know is that there exists a very special version of this game that was only released in Japan. While doing some digging for another video series, I have learned of such things. A couple months ago, I started a series called Reviewing Every Mario Game, in which I attempt to review every game with Mario in it. And I don't just mean every mainline Mario game or every popular spin-off. In the name of being as comprehensive as possible, I took it upon myself to look at every port, every spin-off, and every Mario-adjacent thing, even if Mario is literally just the referee in a boxing match. I literally reviewed Punch-Out!, okay? I literally reviewed Tennis on the NES, Donkey Kong on the TI-99 4A, and the Coleco Mini Arcade. I have traveled in worlds that you can't even imagine for the sake of finding and reviewing every single Mario-related video game on planet Earth. Currently, I have the third of a now undetermined number of hour-long episodes uploaded, and a fourth is in the works, but you're not gonna see that for a while cause we gotta get through the marathon first. It was during the Reviewing Every Mario Game series that I was exposed to this special version of Super Mario Bros., and it happened to be called Super Mario Bros. Special. See? It's right in the title, so you know it's special, because if it wasn't, then they'd be lying. This is a very interesting piece of Nintendo history, and one that a lot of people aren't aware of. Essentially, this was a conversion of the original Super Mario Bros. For the home PC platforms, specifically the PC-8801 and the Sharp X1 machines, which were exclusive to Japan. Today, the idea of Nintendo putting any of their games on PC, or any platform that they don't own for that matter, with the exception of mobile phone games, is absolutely unheard of. Nintendo can be extremely controlling, for better or for worse, and because of this, Nintendo games can only be played on Nintendo platforms today. Super Mario Bros. Special was from a different era, where Nintendo, as established as they were, still had things to figure out, and I guess they somehow decided that it'd be a smart business move to bring their games to other platforms. You gotta remember, they made 98 billion ports of Donkey Kong alone, right? This version of SMB was developed by Hudson Soft, who earlier made versions of the arcade game Mario Bros. Again for the home PCs. One of those was Punch Ball Mario Bros., which is such a goofy idea. It's Mario Bros., but you get to chuck dodgeballs everywhere. They should have added that feature in the original game. The other was Mario Bros. Special, which came out on a cassette tape. Yeah, this thing actually stored games on tapes. That's bonkers. Super Mario Bros. Special, on the other hand, from what I can tell, came on a floppy disk, which is slightly less bonkers, but that should give you an idea of the time period. As you probably noticed by looking at the footage, the graphics and the frame rate are really, really good. Check out these Koopas. Notice how their eyes are red because they're possessed by the devil, or they have allergies, I don't know. Notice how the clouds are yellow, as if they're not regular clouds, but actually trails from a flare grenade. Notice how Mario keeps blinking in and out of existence. This is actually a very clever metaphor for Mario's internal conflicts. A simple blue-collar man is tasked with saving the world, an ordinary man forced into extraordinary circumstances, ultimately becoming a household name and a hero, causing a substantial identity crisis, personified beautifully by a blinking sprite. Also, you gotta love the music. It's like a slow jam to relax to while you contemplate the fact that you spent 6,800 yen on this game. So no, this isn't a spectacular game objectively, though it would have been way more acceptable back when it came out, and the game does actually contain some entirely new enemies and power-ups near the end that weren't present in the original, which is probably where the special part comes in. I never got to see it because I didn't get very far when I played it, but I know they're there because I did my research and other people have provided some nice screenshots to prove that they're not trying to play with my emotions. The levels are also not one-to-one and are probably different enough to be considered entirely new. And these things alone would have probably made this version worth checking out if you happen to have one of those PCs at the time, and if you could put up with the inferior technical grunt. You gotta remember, PC gaming wasn't what it is today, and compared to consoles that were designed for the express purpose of playing video games, PCs were often limiting, so basically the complete photo negative of today. The big thing with the reviewing every Mario game series was to take a walk through Mario and video game history and to examine the context in which everything was made, and when I spoke about this game, I mentioned that there was a ROM hack that brought Super Mario Bros. Special back onto the NES by adding all the content from it to the original Super Mario Bros. It's called Super Mario Bros. Special 35th Anniversary Edition, and as you can imagine, this is a much better way to play this obscure and bizarre piece of lesser-known Nintendo history. This ROM hack, by utilizing the actual Super Mario Bros., is able to show off the cool parts of Super Mario Bros. Special without any of the shortcomings therein. Some of the colors have been tweaked to be slightly more authentic to the PC game, but only in the areas where it looks good and not where it looks off-putting. There are a ton of neat additions to this game that took me by surprise. You can get a pair of angel wings to fly through the air. You can get a hammer from Donkey Kong. Mr. Krabs from Mario Bros. Arcade shows up in this game. Jumping Bastards, that's my pet name for these guys. For all intents and purposes, it's a brand new game. I feel like this ROM hack isn't just an interesting piece of history, but it's also a great case study on how hardware limitations shape game design. In its original state, as mentioned previously, the game didn't scroll, instead opting to generate and overwrite the screen in huge chunks like Dangerous Dave. The frame rate was also not nearly as smooth, so the levels had to be built around all of that, and as a result, they often ended up feeling very segmented and chunky to adapt to that context. When you put those levels in the original engine, it fundamentally changes the experience. In the past, I have expressed my frustration with those stupid Bowser castles that can only be beaten if you take a very specific path in a very specific order, otherwise it loops indefinitely. There is so much trial and error that goes into figuring it out on your own that it ends up being one of the more frustrating parts of an otherwise historically substantial game. But World 7-4 of this game is where it really goes to hell and dies. I literally had to look it up, like, geez, what were they thinking? I don't blame the hacker as much as I blame Hudson Soft, but that company has been dead for 100 years, so I already got my revenge before I even played the game. Super Mario Bros. Special 35th Anniversary Edition is the best way to get at this artifact of Nintendo's early era. Not only because it is far more playable, but because it is very hard to find an actual copy of the original game, and somehow it was also very difficult to emulate. If you are or ever have been curious about this game, I recommend playing this hack instead of seeking out the original unless you're a sucker for authenticity and have the patience to set up a halfway decent emulation environment. If nothing else, it's an interesting piece of history, and if I was able to educate you a little bit with this video, well, that's a wonderful. Wahoo! Now tomorrow we will be discussing another platformer, but it has nothing to do with Mario. Quite the opposite, in fact. The opposite of Mario. Can you guess what it is? If you can, you get a cookie. Merry summer, y'all.